The oldest church in Spain is found in the city of Compostela, and it is associated with the Apostle St. James, our beloved patron, whose feast we are celebrating today. He is the brother of St. John, a son of Zebedee, and part of the core group within the core group of Jesus. The Church of Compostela is not only the mother church of Spain, it is the nerve center of all pilgrimage routes in Europe, popularly known as the Camino, Spanish for the way. You know, one of my dreams is to be able to make that pilgrimage myself one of these days, hopefully with my brother, Randy David. It is supposed to be the most popular kind of retreat in the world. A different kind of retreat, of course. It is not about staying in a retreat house under the direction of a retreat master. It is rather about walking with fellow pilgrims to Compostela while reflecting on nothing else but your own life's journey and sharing it with complete strangers on the way. Inevitably, they say, the pilgrims find Jesus in each other as they walk and break bread with each other. They get to discover the way of Jesus. Or better yet, they discover Jesus, the way. By the way, in early Christianity, the Christian faith was simply called the way. Of course, what they mean is the way of Jesus. And we ask, what is the way of Jesus? Today's gospel is answering this question for the apostle whose feast we celebrate today. This is the passage which recalls how Jesus has rerouted life's journey for our dear St. James. But first, it tells us about the way of ambition which their mother was pursuing for her sons, her two sons. Like all parents, and I'm sure there are a lot of parents who are presently following this online live streamed Mass, especially the parents of St. James Academy. Well, like all parents, the mother of James is well-meaning, of course. It is a natural thing for parents to be ambitious for their children. And it seems that even James and John had owned their mother's ambition for them, which was to become great. How? By aspiring for positions of power in the movement of Jesus. By wanting to be seated on the right and on the left of Jesus in His kingdom. And did you notice the answer of Jesus? He said, "You do not know what you are asking for." I imagine God saying the same thing to people who ask for all sorts of favors from Him in their prayers. You do not know what you are asking for. Well, good thing, God does not just grant everything that we ask for. I don't know if you ever watched that movie entitled Bruce Almighty. How God took the challenge of Bruce for him or for God to take a break and to allow Bruce to be God for a while. And what a huge mess he made of this world, because when he checked on people's prayer requests in the divine computer, he just clicked yes to all their requests. And the result was chaos. I find it heartwarming that Jesus does not tell James and John that it is wrong to aspire for greatness. In a roundabout way, Jesus actually explains to them that they were indeed called to greatness, but that power or positions of authority were not the way to true greatness. If not that, then what is it? In the heart of the Gospel of St. Mark, there is a whole section which I regard as the centerpiece of the whole Gospel, and which Bible scholars call the on-the-way passages. Mark has a very simple outline for his Gospel. Jesus is coming from Galilee and he is going to Jerusalem. Destination, Jerusalem. Between the Galilean section and the Jerusalem section is a whole part which we call on the way. They are no longer in Galilee, but they are not yet in Jerusalem. They are on the way. On the way, Jesus is misunderstood by the disciples 3 times. And Jesus very patiently tries to make them understand what his way is about. In 3 chapters, 8, 9, and 10. In chapter 8, he is misunderstood by St. Peter, who blocks his path when Jesus speaks about suffering, dying, and rising in Jerusalem. And Jesus tells Peter that he is allowing himself to be used by Satan as a stumbling block instead of fulfilling his vocation to become the rock foundation of the church. And then he proceeds to explain that his way is the path of self-denial. St. Paul in Philippians chapter 2 refers to it as kenosis, which is my slogan or motto as a bishop. It means emptying of the self, total egolessness. That the path of discipleship is no less than the cross. That's chapter 8, first part of On the Way section. Middle part of On the Way section, chapter 9. He is misunderstood again. The disciples are preoccupied with arguing with one another as to who among them was the greatest. Palakasan, pataasan. But instead of explaining, you know what Jesus did? He took a child and placed it in their midst. It was his way of explaining to them that his way is the path of littleness or of childlikeness. Many centuries later, my favorite saint, Saint Therese of Lisieux, would build a whole spirituality around this lesson, the way of humility the way of absolute self-entrustment to the Father's will. That's chapter 9. And then finally, the last part of the middle, the on the way section, chapter 10. And this is the parallel to our gospel reading today, which in Matthew is in chapter 20. He is misunderstood again, and this time by the two brothers, James and John, who are aspiring for positions of authority in their desire to be great. Well, of course, Matthew changes it a little bit. Not James and John exactly, but the mother. But then halfway through the story, you hear it straight from the mouth of James and John. Ambisyoso din sila. And Jesus explains to the both of them that the way to true greatness is not about lording it over other people, but about being a servant leader. Dito inimbento yung vocabulary of servant leadership. And it is a paradox. It sounds contradictory for people of this world. Because you know what? In this world, people find it difficult to understand this concept. In this world, leaders do not serve. Bossing sila. In this world, servants do not lead. Alipin sila. Not in the world of Jesus. Jesus puts together servanthood and leadership. Because neither one nor the other is true if they're not put together. For Jesus, leadership and servanthood go together. And there is no other example but himself. He says, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life for the redemption of the many. In the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 24, we have an interesting story about two disciples on the way, but running away from Jerusalem. Well, Jerusalem is now associated with the trauma of failure, of suffering, and dying. They are also on the way, but on the wrong way. The opposite way. The way of self-preservation. What does Jesus do? He appears to them as a stranger, as a fellow traveler. He walks with them and eats with them. He breaks bread with them. What for? To redirect their journey to Jerusalem. Eventually, they find themselves on the way again, but this time on the right way. No longer running away. This time, their fear is turned into courage. Their sadness is transformed into joy. They are on the way to victory, the victory of the resurrection. But the route is the way of passion and death. My dear students of St. James Academy of Malabon, most of you, if not all of you, are intelligent young men and women who, I am sure, have your own ambitions in life. Hindi naman masamang mag-ambisyon. I am sure you also want greatness. But I hope today's gospel has made clear to you what that means. Most of you are beginning to blaze a trail. Some of you are probably not yet sure which path to take. Sabi nga nung kanta ni Sister Estela L., Walang komplikasyon ng buhay ko noon. Kalooban mo'y panatag, kalangitan ay maaliwalas, ang daan ay tuwid at patag sa buhay mo noon. Ngunit bawat pusong naglalakbay, dumarating sa sangang daan. Ngayong narito ka, kailangang magpasya. Aling landas ang susundin ng puso? Saan ka liligaya? Saan mabibigo? Saan ka tutungo? Hindi naman urig si Sister Estela L. That comes from Robert Frost, who says in his poem, "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I couldn't take them both." Totoo naman, di ba sabi nga ng mga nakatatanda, huwag kang mamangka sa dalawang ilog. We have to make important choices in life. And we have to decide at some point which path to take. Aling landas ang susundin ng puso? Saan ka liligaya? Saan mabibigo? Pero saan ka tutungo? Sometimes, you get confused because you look and you do not see a path. Wala kang makitang daan. There is a Spanish poet who wrote a beautiful poem that became a song about this. He said in Spanish, "Caminando no hay camino, se hace camino al andar." Alam ko, hindi naman kayo marunong ng Kastila. I-translate natin. In English, it says, "Walking where there is no path, you make the path while you walk." Sa Tagalog, sa paglalakbay, kapag walang daan, gumawa ng daan habang naglalakbay. Isn't that beautiful? Yes. You make the path. You make the path while you're walking. And you will not get lost as long as you have a travel companion. I'd like to believe that at St. James, you have learned from James. You have discovered your travel companion, the rabbi, the master, the teacher, Jesus himself. You will discover as you go along that Jesus himself is the way, the truth, and the life. Amen.